Morning, I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions, and let me direct my first question, Dr. Sanders, to you. You will be challenged, by the way, to give a brief answer to my question, which is, what are the short-term and long-term steps that need to be taken to protect the electric grid from cyber attacks?
You're right. Professors are not known for being brief, but I'll do my best.
Okay. And if you have to pick, choose the short term as opposed to long term.
Okay.
No.
So first, let me say that there's a large effort underway today, much different than there was at the turn of the century, to protect the grid against cyber attacks. Since the early 2000s, the Department of Energy, the National Science Foundation, the national labs and others have been working in this area, and substantial progress has been made. So, in a sense, what needs to be done, and I think what we are doing, is taking a concerted approach where industry, government, and academia come together to work on this problem. Many ideas, technical ideas and technical solutions have been developed, and a short-term challenge, and maybe the most important short-term challenge, is to find ways within the very multifaceted landscape that includes regulation, that includes issues with costs, that includes states and federal governments, to find ways to implement those solutions. We've made substantial progress there, but there are many things that still have been developed that need to be implemented to make our grid secure.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sanders. And Mr. Imhoff, what can the government do to encourage innovation that will promote resiliency?
Another short answer. I think the key is to provide leadership, to encourage the combination of fundamental advances in mathematics, in control theory, in data analytics, and advanced computing, and link those closely with industry through bodies such as NERC, the Electric Subsector Coordinating Council, which is a strong government industry body, working with NRECA and APPA and others, to help move those fundamental advances to practice and implementation within industry. Step one would be field validation. Most of those are cost shared. I think most industry members would argue that they've been very productive. So I think from the federal standpoint, leadership to help drive forward the fundamental knowledge to help us innovate and stay in front of the wave is a fundamental contribution.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Imhoff. And Mr. Baum, in what way does the Texas electric grid in what way does it differ from other grids, and why?
Well, the Texas electric grid we talk a lot about, Texas is very different, and Texas has its own grid. ERCOT covers 85% of the area of the state and about 90% of the load. It doesn't cover the entire state. Areas in the Panhandle and the corners of Texas aren't part of the grid, but we are our own grid. Power that is generated in Texas largely stays in Texas. Of about 70,000 possible megawatts of generation at any time, we can only import or export under 1,000 megawatts. So, we truly I like to say that Texas is an island a lot on electricity. That sounds a little callous now with what's going on with Puerto Rico, but we are pretty much on our own, and so that we are different from the rest of the country in terms of that goes.
Okay, but in positive ways that you just mentioned, because of the coverage and so forth. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Baum. Dr. Sanders, one last question for you. Would we benefit from simplifying our structure, having fewer government agencies and departments involved? I guess it depends on how you simplify, but do you think that's a direction we should go? And I think that's one of your recommendations anyway.
So the committee report was neutral on the actual government structure to be used. The committee felt very strongly that this is a complicated issue, that there are different issues, for example, the interaction between DHS and DOE that are working well, but these need to be coordinated.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sanders. And that concludes my time, and the gentleman from